Welcome to this week's episode of the Sports Room Talk Show. We brought it down to the very last minute, but there's a very somber reason why it came down to the very last minute. I unfortunately suffered a death in the family. It was early Friday morning around 5:30 Eastern time that my grandma passed away due to cancer. So you can imagine it's been a bit of a tough time. And also, Wednesday night, I actually had to go to the emergency room due to possible life threatening infection. So, fun times. But we're here now. It we're gonna take the punches, and we got the Browns home opener tomorrow, going against the New York Jets. So I got my fellow New York Jets YouTuber with me, DKBX Jets. I like it. Seems like you're playing all that the Jets chant that they do, JETS 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 Jets. I like it. I like it. How you doing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. For starters, blessings to the family for sure. Better fortunes coming to you guys. But I'm good. The day before the game is always a little bit nervous for me just because how the Jets' recent history has been. But I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah. Um I unfortunately will not be able to watch any of the game tomorrow because the funeral is happening tomorrow and all that comes with that. So that stinks a little bit because we're looking to go 2-0 for the first time since 1993 after we won our first season opener since 2004.
Yeah, I just seen that myself. I was like, there's a 2-0 start potentially coming, within 20 years. It's crazy to kind of think about.
Yeah. I looked at the point spread, and the Browns are currently favored by 6.5. What do you think of that? Do you think that should be bigger? Do you think it should be smaller? Do you think it's about where it should be for this game?
I think it's a bit high, and I think it really depends on how people feel about the power rankings with the teams. I guess I would say that the Browns are probably just under the Ravens to me, and we gave the Ravens were favored by 7. So considering that we're facing another team, and the fact that you guys are a rush oriented offense, I would say maybe 4.5, because if you guys don't go crazy with big plays, it's going to be a game that's a little bit long winded, and where I'm not expecting huge explosions of 70 plus yard passing plays. So I think it's a bit high, but yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think 6.5, considering both offenses are dealing with backup quarterbacks, I think 6.5 is a little bit high. But maybe you guys shouldn't be as concerned, if you will, because your backup quarterback is Joe Flacco, right? And he's very familiar with the Browns. Granted, he hasn't seen this integration of the Browns. I get it, but he, you know, he's been a bit of a journeyman. He was with Philly and all that, but he started his career with the Baltimore Ravens. Well, the Browns and Ravens are AFC North division rivals. I would argue the Ravens are the Browns' biggest rival within the division, but that's neither here nor there. So Flacco's not going to be intimidated coming into First Energy Stadium. Like, he knows what it's like to play in the dog pound.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's a good history trend for him, right? I think I've seen something like he has a 14-3, like win-loss record against you guys or something like that. So he's familiar with it. I think to your point, he hasn't seen this exact talent level on the defense. He's familiar with the rushing game and stuff. So I think the thing that works in his favor Heading into week 2 again, because he did have a pretty poor showing in week 1 against the Ravens, is the fact that he's facing a familiar opponent, familiar environment from what he's used to. But he can really ease himself into things without feeling like he has to put, 21 points up in the first quarter. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. If somebody can get off to a fast start, I think much like I was saying with the Ravens in week 1, the game could be decided in the first quarter.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that too, because with your defense, you're facing a backup quarterback, but Jacoby Brissett, he was just with the Dolphins, I believe, so he's kind of familiar with this integration of the Jets, because again, the Dolphins and Jets are AFC East inhabitant. So that is kind of an interesting facet to this game, that both quarterbacks are kind of familiar with the opponent.
Yeah, I think the X factor is that we haven't necessarily played the same coaches, right? So even though there might be a little bit of scheme familiarity, there's some different things that are being done. On Robert Sala's defense, the biggest plus for us that I think maybe gives us the advantage, even though there's been some level of history, is that we completely switched our defensive scheme. So even with Jacoby Brissett, he's seen us when we were essentially running a 3-4 as opposed to this 4-3 defense that we have now. We also pretty much changed, 75% of our starters on defense. So there's also this aspect that they don't really have tape, because we also have, a roster that's filled with rookie and second year players.
Right. I mean, if Joe Flacco, or I'm sorry, if Zach Wilson wasn't injured due to the torn meniscus and bone bruise that he suffered against Philly, he would be your starting quarterback, and this would only be, I believe, his third year in the league. He was drafted number two.
Second year for him.
Oh,
Yeah,
second
so
year.
sophomore year for him. I think this would be technically his 14th game, because he wasn't able to make any starts in the regular season. So I think this is only his 14th or 15th, NFL game.
Gotcha. I what I do know though is he was drafted here in Cleveland. Actually, he was part of
Yes.
that draft. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was at I was at that draft uh, for the first 4 picks, but we couldn't stay. We didn't stay very for longer than that, because it was just like I had a flight to catch the next day. My sister and her boyfriend, now her fiance, they didn't want to stay that late, so
Nah,
I
yeah,
kind of out.
I get it. The
I was
NFL draft was fun. It's a whole ordeal. I went to the one out here last year in Vegas, so it was a pretty good experience.
Yeah. So tell me, so you're living out in Vegas, but you're a Jets fan. How did that come about?
Yeah, so originally I'm from Jersey, Summersville, Atlantic City area. Uh, I didn't get majorly into football until maybe I was like 9, 10 years old. I used to love this show called King of Queens. And he's also one of our biggest fans, the main character on there. So he used to have Jet stuff all along, and I didn't know much about football outside of when I would randomly play Madden. So I looked into the team a little bit. It was one of the games that used to come on more frequently on the West Coast for us. And I just kind of fell in love with the team. We had a lot of hype stories about our undrafted free agents, Jericho Cotchery, and we had the Wayne Corbett's of the world, Nick Mangolds and stuff like that. So we had a lot of like high media priority as well. So it just kind of naturally developed and happened for me.
Gotcha. And you haven't been. Nobody's tried to convince you to go over to the dark side with the Raiders since moving out to Vegas.
Yeah, no, I get it a lot, and it's funny because I work at a bank out here that supports the stadium for them. So I constantly get flack all day at work, and then of course when I'm hanging out outside of work, if I'm not with the kids.
Gotcha. Well, don't worry. I'm not going to give you any type of flack. I respect you as a Jets fan. Um, thanks again for working with me. I appreciate it. But yeah, so You guys only put up 9 points against the Ravens last week. Do you think that's just because it was week 1 and you're still trying to familiarize yourself with the offense, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. So realistically, I say we put up three, right? Because we got that touchdown in garbage time in the fourth quarter after multiple extra attempts being in the red zone. So the way I look at it is a little bit skewed, and I hate trying to put us on like a different standard than the rest of the NFL. But when I take a look at the bigger picture, we have a second-year coaching staff because literally almost our entire coaching staff, outside of a few key position players, are either in their first or second year coaching. We had Zach Wilson. He doesn't even have a full season under his belt. We have a sophomore and a rookie running back leading the way, mostly sophomore outside of Corey Davis wide receiver group. So there's literally it's almost like having a team that's coming out of what did we used to call them, coming out of like a first merger or something. It's almost like looking at the New York Titans that we used to be.
Mm,
So it's interesting because we've seen what our offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur, has looked like with the 49ers, but he got to naturally develop and groom that. He hasn't been able to have that steady pace with Zach Wilson and his offense. And so it's a little bit for me feeling like he has so many more weapons than he did with the 49ers. Even though they were a great offense, it really was kind of like a one-man show over there. So I think he has more offensive weaponry at his disposal, and he's also still trying to balance not making his offense predictable while not overcomplicating it for the players. So I'll feel better about our first halves once I can see some kind of like proven production there, because that has been an Achilles heel for us for the better part of almost 2 decades.
gotcha. So, like, once your team is fully healthy with Garrett Wilson, Zach, I don't know if Garrett Wilson's actually injured or not. I'm just putting that out
Yeah.
there for example. But like Zach Wilson, you drafted Brees Hall, you drafted Sauce Gardner. You guys were like considered one of the big winners coming out of the draft. Hey, even as a Browns fan, I really liked what you guys did in the draft. Getting Sauce Gardner, getting Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall. I really liked him coming out of Iowa State. I thought he was going to go in the first round, but you guys managed to get him later in the draft. So I think he could be the X factor in this game for you guys. Like, maybe not necessarily running the ball, even. Like, maybe you guys do some, like, running back screen passes with him coming out of the backfield, something like that to try and slow down our pass rush because Myles Garrett is coming, Jadeveon Clowney is coming. So what's a good way to combat that? Screen passes.
Yeah, most definitely. I am expecting, I won't say a heavy screen usage. I think we'll throw in just enough to try to, get them to hitch a little bit. Um, I would probably say our X factor will really come down to how balanced we are as an offense. It's a little bit generic, but I think if we don't throw the ball 59 times like we did in week 1 and we do rely more on Michael Carter and Brees Hall, I think we'll find a little bit more success in week 2 that maybe will allow us to stay in the game for the entirety of the game and not just get blown out in the third quarter. I think Michael Carter, even though Brees Hall has been getting a lot of hype and we've seen what he did at Iowa and how excellent he's been, he's still a rookie. He's still, is kind of going through the motions. And I get running back is one of those positions that's easier to get production right away. But I think he'll flourish maybe in the second half of the season. I'm still expecting Michael Carter to kind of take over because he was doing excellent in week 1. 10 carries, 60 yards in the first half, and then we had to kind of get away from the running game. So I think there's a good opportunity. It's not like the Ravens are slouching on the defensive line either. So we'll see how we stand up to you guys for sure.
Yeah. We're coming at you heavy with a run game because we got Nick Chubb, we got Kareem Hunt, but I feel the same way you do. Like, I want to see a little more balance with us. Like, I want to see more of a passing game because I don't want it to be like, teams coming out every week going, hey, we're just going to put 9 in the box and Jacoby Brissett, let's see if you can throw it to Amari Cooper. Let's see if you can throw it to Donovan Peoples-Jones. Anthony Schwartz, can you actually catch a pass? You know, like I need to see a little bit more from our passing game because I don't. I'm not saying we need to go away from the run game because that's obviously like our DNA.
Yeah.
But it just sometimes feels like it's out of balance, if you will.
Yeah, I think when people look at the stat sheet, it looks like you guys did pretty well in terms of like how you tried to attack the Panthers last week, right? Jacoby Brissett got 34 opportunities to go out there and chuck it. I think in the rushing attack, you guys rushed like 39 times, something like that, total. So I think it was a good balance from like that perspective, right? Not overly leaning one way or the other. I think it'll be interesting to see if Jacoby Brissett can maybe take advantage of our linebacker core. We're much improved, of course, with Quan Alexander being there, because I think the middle of the field could potentially be vulnerable. Quincy Williams is kind of hit or miss. He'll either have an excellent game or he'll be a dud that's just making mistakes left and right. And then CJ Mosley, he's obviously one of those top tier kind of middle linebackers from the olden days. But he's not necessarily the best coverage linebacker. So I'm more particularly interested to see if you guys use Dearness Johnson and more of that Deion Johnson role that you guys used to have, where he kind of specialized in the receiving in much like James White, as I mentioned, Deion Johnson, things in that mold. Personally, I think you guys might have another rough day in the air though. Against the cornerbacks, at least. I'm not sure what happened with Amari Cooper in week 1 for you guys. But it looks like I would say we're favored. Our cornerbacks look like they match up favorably against the receiving ends that you guys have.
Yeah. I feel like this game's not going to be like a high scoring game where it's like 34-31 type thing. This feels like it's going to be a very low scoring kind of defensive battle, like a 17-14 type game, or maybe like a 21-17 type of game. Does it have that same type of
Yeah,
vibe
no,
to you?
I was thinking exactly the same thing. 14-17 on a high end. I think it could probably be as crazy as like a 7-10 ending, something like that. But yeah, that's about the ballpark I'm in.
Yeah, because I like what you got. Again, I like what you guys have on offense with Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall. You mentioned Michael Carter. But like Joe Flacco's in what? Like his 20th year in the league, something like that. Like if you had Zach Wilson in there, I would say, yeah, I could see a little bit more scoring from your offense. Because again, I like what you have. I've said that. But and with us, it's like Jacoby Brissett's so iffy, and like I don't trust our passing game. So where's the offense going to come from?
That makes a lot of sense. So I have 2 questions for you, I guess, in preparation for this game that's coming up. The first one
Sure.
would be David Njoku was going to be a free agent for you guys, right? You ended up bringing him back, and I believe he got the extension from you guys as well afterwards. He was a guy that I was looking for as a sneaky pickup for us, but he ended up not really playing too high of a role. So do you guys feel like you end up trying to target the tight ends a little bit more this time around? Um, and then the second one would be, do you guys feel like you are prepared in case we move on from Joe Flacco if he does poorly and we end up inserting Mike White into the lineup?
That's the thing. So, like, we've been preparing for Joe Flacco. Obviously, we've been preparing for Joe Flacco all week. So, it would be a bit of a shock to the system if you guys were to bring in Mike White. Kind of like when you guys last came to Cleveland in 2018 for that Thursday night game when Tyrod Taylor got injured and Baker Mayfield came in. Like, you guys weren't preparing for Baker Mayfield. You guys were preparing for Tyrod Taylor. So it was a bit of a shock to your system. Um, so I think it would be a similar situation in that. Do I
Mhm.
think Mike White would lead you guys to the win like Baker Mayfield did for us? It's hard to say. I Mike White has had some games in the past where he looked fantastic. I'm not going to lie on that one. But then he's had some games where it's like, okay, I see why you're a backup quarterback. So it's hard with backup quarterbacks because you just don't know what type of game you're going to get. And as for your first question, again, it's so hard with this passing game to really predict what we're going to do in terms of, are we going to target the wide receivers more, or are we going to target the tight ends more? Because I my guess is we will, but I don't feel confident in saying that.
Mm.
Here's what I would love to see though. During preseason, we we saw Josh Dobbs play fairly well before obviously Brissett came in week 1 and did what he did. But I would love to see the Browns maybe do a couple wildcat plays tomorrow.
Mm.
Like maybe because similar to what you were asking me about Mike White, I would venture to bet the Jets are only preparing for Jacoby Brissett. They're not preparing for Josh Dobbs. So what if we were to throw in a, a couple wildcat plays where take Jacoby Brissett out and we have Josh Dobbs come in. Something like that.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. I know Wildcat has kind of been dying out as like a a play set amongst teams around the league, but I think it's things just like that people also could take advantage of. People aren't preparing for Wildcat anymore. I think the Saints probably, and they have of course their own variation of it, but they're probably one of the last teams that really explicitly use it on like a week to week basis and see a decent amount of success with it, right? So. Um, I wouldn't say it'll probably sway the game one way or the other per se, but I think it could probably be a good momentum builder when it's sprinkled in there, and maybe you guys have like a solid quarter from start to finish.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think it would decide the game or anything like that, but I think you're right that it could be like maybe it shifts the momentum in our direction. Like maybe it's like 3rd down and 5, and it could be a pivotal, it could be a momentum shifting type thing. Hey, why not try bringing in Josh Dobbs to do a wildcat play? Try and swing the momentum back in our direction type thing. So usually what I see with our defense is, it's Myles Garrett, it's Jadeveon Clowney getting after the quarterback, and then on the back end, that's where Greedy Williams or Grant Delpit, Greg Newsome, that's where you'll see those guys. But it's Denzel Ward that's going to match up with the opponent's number 1 wide receiver, 10, usually.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess if would be that he's going to be matched up with Corey Davis, since I kind of view him as your number 1 wide receiver. What do you think?
Interesting. I could see that being a matchup because Robert Saleh said it on multiple occasions. He considers Corey Davis our number 1. I think a lot of what factors into that, though, is he understands how youthful the roster is. And so with Corey Davis being the veteran and having, more seasons under his belt, he's more likely to have a level of consistency as a number 1, whereas you might see wild swings from an Elijah Moore, who's only in his sophomore year, a Garrett Wilson, who's a rookie. But I think we're deep, and I do think we have players that have shown that they could be a number 1. When we gave snaps to Garrett Wilson to, start the second half, we seen him flourish. 4 catches. I think he finished 52 yards. Elijah Moore looked great and consistent. Joe Flacco just couldn't connect with him on a few more balls. Corey Davis is the wild card to me, honestly, in our offense. I really feel like originally the plan was that he would be a strong number one for us. I think after that first season, we understood that maybe he's just a above average or average number two, which is not a problem. There's plenty of offenses out here that can't say they're 4 or 5 deep with, number two type wide receivers in the NFL. So I'm more particular to see if you guys do match up Denzel Ward against Corey Davis, and we see that Elijah Moore maybe starts to take off, or Garrett Wilson, or we see Braxton Berrios. Will you guys start trying to shift alignments and just have them follow whoever's starting to be more productive?
Yeah. I did see that on your injury report, Braxton Berrios was questionable for tomorrow's game. Um, I don't know officially I don't know if they've updated it to say that he's going to play or not. I'd have to look. But either way, I think you're right. You guys can go deep at wide receiver, whereas with us, I'm not 100% sure if we can do that or not. Like last week on our official depth chart against Carolina, we had like 3 or 4 running backs. And I'm like, why not try and use some of them in the passing game? Like, we primarily use Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So I'm sure that's what the Jets are preparing for. So you said it yourself earlier. Like, why not bring out Dearness Johnson and use him in the passing game? We have the rookie Jerome Ford out of Cincinnati. Why not try to utilize him in the passing game? Something like that. Give you a different look that you weren't necessarily preparing for. Like what I said earlier in maybe utilizing the Wildcat with Josh
Mhm.
Dobbs.
Yeah, I think it'd be a tendency breaker if you guys went with some two back sets where we did see Dearness Johnson. Jerome Ford, I'm familiar with just from when I was scouting Cincinnati during the draft. So I know how explosive he can be. It could cause a problem. It's not a one-dimensional rushing attack, which is the hardest part about what you guys have. I'm trying to think of who was saying it in a recent interview for us. Carl Lawson and I think CJ Mosley. They were saying you guys essentially have one of the rarest backfields in that you have two potential, depending on who you talk to, top 10 running backs, right? And then you still have these younger players that are also so explosive. They don't know what they don't know necessarily, so they can just go out there and go crazy completely off athleticism. So it's an interesting perspective to have. And an interesting problem. I mean, if Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb dominate, then it's this question doesn't necessarily even matter. But if we do see that the offense starts to hiccup, do they start looking at those options, or does somebody step up in the receiving game? With it being a lower scoring game, the biggest question for me will be how special teams plays out. We had a very poor showing week one. We could not win field advantage to save our day. Brady Man shanked a 20-yard punt during a critical time for us. And we've seen how Greg Zerline, underperformed, even though that's uncommon generally for him. But you guys seem like you might have found, the Holy Grail in Cade York. So, what have you thought about him?
I I'll tell you what, when that kick went up and it looked like it was going to be wide right, I'm like, oh my God, this is the most Browns way to lose to open the season. And when it curled back in and goes right through the uprights, I'm at my friend's house watching it with a bunch of my guys in a theater room. We started hugging and celebrating like we just won the freaking Super Bowl. It was absolutely hilarious. But hey, when you haven't won a season opener since 2004, you have the right to do that. Um, Interestingly, I was writing an article for Fanside talking about this game. This is going to be like the 8th time in 11 years that the two teams have played each other. The only times we haven't played each other were in that time period 2012, 2014, and 2021. Otherwise, we've played each other. You guys have mostly dominated, or I shouldn't say dominated the series, but you guys have won more of the games in that time period. With the most recent one being 2020, week 16 in New York. And you got, or no, we won 2019 in New York on Monday Night Football in week 2, 23-3. So this is actually going to be the second time in 3 years that we've played each other in week 2. So that's just kind of an interesting trend I noticed. But what do you think? Do you think that the Jets are going to be able to handle the environment? Because this is probably going to be like an environment we haven't seen in Cleveland in a while, being that, the Guardians are also going to be playing at the same time in a key game against the Minnesota Twins. But more importantly, like I said earlier, we're trying to go 2-0 for the first time since 1993. And we haven't won a season opener since 2004. So it's going to be an enhanced environment. Are you worried about that as a Jets fan?
A little bit. A lot of that just factors into that we're young, right? But I think it's up in the air for me. Another interesting comment that came my way was a reporter was asking Carl Lawson, about loud environments in preparation for this game, and he was mentioning, I need to experience for myself, but he was saying a lot of NFL games aren't necessarily as loud as college games. So when people say that, it's kind of just another day in the office for them, but he did mention Cincinnati as kind of being one of those teams, along with like the Minnesota Vikings, I think it was, where that stadium is about as loud as you would expect when things are going right for an NFL team. So I think defensively, we have the veteran presence in place at the key spots at each level, that won't be a problem. I think offensively is where that could get shaky for us. Corey Davis really being the only vet. We do have vets on the offensive line, but we haven't been able to gel together. Our starting five that we originally had planned only played together 21 snaps during the preseason, and then we had the last minute Dwayne Brown injury. Kai Becton went down during. So I think our offensive line would get more so rattled than anywhere else.
Okay. I'm actually a little bit worried about it as a Browns fan myself. And I'll tell you why. Because again, I feel like this is going to be a little bit of an enhanced environment, as I was just explaining. So, like, are the Browns going to be able to come out laser focused, or are they going to get caught up in all the pandemonium and come out playing mistake-filled, sloppy football? Which, even though you're a fairly young team, you guys could take full advantage of that. You've got, like you said, you've got Elijah Moore, you've got Garrett Wilson, you've got Breece Hall, you've got Michael Carter. You've got guys who can make plays, both offensively and defensively. You mentioned C.J. Mosley, Sauce Gardner. So I am nervous about that aspect of the game.
I would probably say, and this isn't to, this isn't to sway things one way or the other for either team, but I think one of the benefits of having a run-oriented offense is that you can take a lot of that off, right? We've seen expectation-wise for you guys, you generally perform like a top 5 to top 10 rushing offense. What comes with that is that you don't necessarily have to worry about the tempo of games so much per se. You guys can control what's happening. You generally dominate time of possession. So it gives you a lot of leeway to kind of get that pressure off of you and settle back in. And then, play action works and it just kind of opens up even more things. So I would say I'm not expecting that to be as much of a concern for you guys. I think I'm waiting to see if you guys press your receiving options a little bit more. It just kind of seemed like things were a little bit underwhelming. Amari Cooper only catching 3 balls. David Njoku couldn't do anything. Anthony Schwartz only had the 1 reception.
I
and it
don't
was
know
interesting.
how he made the team. I have no idea. He was so bad in the preseason. I went to both preseason home games against the Eagles and against the Bears, and I'm just watching Anthony Schwartz, and I'm like, what? How are you dropping this many passes. This is ridiculous. And I get it. I'm not an NFL player. I'm just like a YouTuber. So I know I'm not really in the right to say it, but whatever. I consider myself a media member. Like, hey, we're YouTubers. We're part. This is part of the new form of media. So you
You get
know,
paid to perform at the end of the day. I mean, if you're not up to snub, then we'll
I'm.
see him packing grocery bags soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. So um, you do you have to get going, or are you still good?
Yeah, I got about another 5, 10, and then I'll probably grab the boys. I can hear them getting a little crazy.
Okay, no problem. So we can start wrapping it up. Again, I appreciate you working around my schedule. It means a lot means a lot to me. Cuz this week has just been nuts as you can imagine.
Yeah,
It
no doubt. He's definitely pushing through. I'm surprised he's still trying to, still got to go on with life, but trying to keep things status quo gets hard with, all the stuff you got going on.
yeah, I'm not going to be able to like follow the game at all tomorrow for obvious reasons. So, um, I if we do some type of post game report, I'm not gonna really be able to comment like, yeah, I saw this play and here are my thoughts on it, or like if there's any controversy or whatever, I'm not gonna be able to. I'd have to go back and watch a replay of the game, which I'm DVRing the game anyway because I thought I
Mm.
was going to be at the game, but obviously not.
Yeah, no,
So
it's a struggle. Trust me. Being on the West Coast, unless I get like the special package before the season starts, I get like maybe 1 or 2 games on TV. Everything else I have to try to watch highlights and like catch up on for. So yeah, I feel the pain.
yeah, are you gonna be able to watch the game tomorrow? Are you gonna be relying highlights?
Yeah, I'm gonna be relying on highlights. I do have a good friend that usually, I don't know what you call it, downloads, but he gets the like all 22 tape stuff, so he'll usually shoot me some stuff over. Um, but yeah, I'll pretty much be living on highlights tomorrow.
Gotcha. All right, so I think we're gonna wrap things up. I've enjoyed this, but let's just do some score predictions. Generally, what I do with the Browns per is I do it per game. I'm not gonna predict. Obviously, I didn't predict the Browns to go like 17-0. That's just unrealistic. And there are certain games where I'm like, you know what? I don't think the Browns are actually going to win this game, so I'm not going to pick them. However, with this game, I think you guys will give us a good challenge. It's not going to be an easy game. I think you and I agree that it's going to be low scoring defensive battle. I think we come out with a 21-17 win in the end, though.
Okay. I don't want to say obviously because I do about the same. I do try to be objective with like the winning records and the scores and everything. I do have us pulling this one out. I think we piece things together and build off of what we did in I want to say the second half in week 1, or the first half, anyways, before things fell apart. And I think because you don't have the same level of playmaking ability at the quarterback position right now until at least Deshaun Watson comes back. Uh, I'll go 2 routes with it. I'll say if it's the close game, I think we were right the first go around, 14-17. I'd say Jets victory. I do think if everything blows our way and you guys end up having to rely on catch up, I would probably say like a 28-17 Jets win maybe. But I think the first score will sway either way. I really think it's going to be 14-17, and that'll really depend on who had the most success early.
Yeah, I think we said this earlier. The 6.5 point spread in favor of the Browns. I think that's a little. I think we agree that's a little too high. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Sports Room Talk Show. Thank you for coming on and doing this with me. I really appreciate it. Um, Definitely want to stay in contact, and I'm sure we'll be seeing each other in upcoming seasons and whatnot. Like I said, we seem to always play each other. We might as well be in the same freaking division at this point. It's unbelievable. So, but we'll definitely still be in contact, and obviously I'm not going to be able to do any type of banter with you tomorrow, but you know, maybe like in a post game video or something, what the winner can do a little bit of trash talk, whatever, respectful trash talk, obviously.
Yeah,
Although
yeah, for sure.
yeah. Hey, maybe if the Jets win, I'll give you a free like JETS type thing. I don't know.
I got you. Yeah,
Actually,
yeah, we'll work it out.
I'll maybe I'll do that either way because I do respect the Jets a lot. They're not one of those teams that I'm like, oh, I absolutely despise the Jets type thing. I don't dislike them, but I don't like them either. I'm just kind of indifferent about them.
Tolerable. I got you.
Yeah. Hey, there will be some games where I'm like, you know what? I feel like rooting for the Jets today.
Yeah. No, I think that happens to everybody at some point if we're being honest with ourselves.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm not doing that tomorrow. Hey, I'm just being honest with you. But no, that's gonna wrap things up. I gotta get ready to go to bed and be prepared for everything that's happening tomorrow. It's not gonna be fun. I'll try my best to keep emotions in check. So it's gonna be hard for me during the funeral to not check my phone and be like, "Hey, what's the score of the Browns Jets game?" But
Hey, everybody has their own grieving process, but yeah, once again, more blessings to you guys and the family. Hopefully everything goes as well as it can in that situation for you guys.
yeah, hey, maybe who knows? My grandma will be up in heaven and she'll be like, you know what? I'm gonna bless the Browns with a win this week.
Hey, it works. Things happen.
No disrespect to the Jets in that regard. No disrespect. But thanks again, man.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on the channel for sure. I appreciate the love, and it's been fun. We'll definitely make sure whenever we match up, we can definitely do this more often. Maybe we'll see each other in the playoffs at some point in the
Yeah.
next year or two.
And hopefully when we do these video collaborations again, it'll be on a not so somber note.
Definitely.